The sun bathed the garden in golden hues as I walked down the aisle towards my future. The scent of flowers mingled with the soft notes of a string quartet, creating an atmosphere that felt straight out of a fairy tale. My heart fluttered in my chest, a mix of excitement and nervousness as I locked eyes with my husband. To be. My father, standing proudly by my side, beamed at me. His eyes glistened with a mixture of happiness and a touch of sentimentality. "You look absolutely stunning, my dear," he whispered, his voice warm and comforting. I smiled back, feeling a surge of emotion. "Thank you, Dad. I'm so grateful to have you here with me." As I reached the altar, my husband's gaze met mine, his eyes filled with a mixture of adoration and awe. We exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through thick and thin. The moment we were declared husband and wife, cheers erupted from our friends and family, filling the air with a symphony of joy. After the ceremony, amidst the lively chatter and clinking of glasses, my husband and I stole a moment alone. He took my hand, his touch reassuring. "You look breathtaking, Sarah. Today has been everything I've ever dreamed of." I blushed, feeling a rush of warmth spread through me. "You don't look too bad yourself," I teased, earning a chuckle from him. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. "But you know what the best part is?" I turned to him, curiosity piqued. "What?" His eyes twinkled mischievously. "That we have a lifetime of adventures ahead of us, and I can't wait to share every moment with you." His words melted my heart, and in that moment, I knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey together. The world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us, lost in the promise of forever. Little did I know that life had its challenges waiting for us, tests that would try our love and resilience. But for now, in that enchanting moment, all that mattered was the love that bound us and the fairy tale beginning we had embarked upon. As the days rolled on after our grand wedding, life settled into a routine of domestic bliss. My husband and I reveled in the newlywed glow, savoring every moment of togetherness. But amidst the happiness, there was a presence that cast a shadow over our harmony. My husband's sister, Emily, made her presence known in a way that was impossible to ignore. Tall and elegantly dressed, she exuded an air of superiority that seemed to fill every room she entered. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves around her shoulders, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. On the surface, she was cordial, offering smiles and polite conversation to our guests. But beneath that veneer was a palpable arrogance that made me uneasy. Her snide remarks and backhanded compliments left me questioning her intentions. One evening, during a family dinner, Emily turned her attention to me. "Sarah, dear," she began, her tone sugary sweet, "your choice of decor is quite quaint, I suppose." I bit my tongue, refusing to be drawn into her game. My husband, sensing the tension, interjected, "We love it, Emily." She laughed lightly, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Of course, darling brother, I'm sure you do." My father, ever the peacekeeper, attempted to shift the conversation. "How about we all go out for dessert after dinner?" Emily's gaze shifted to my father, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Oh, Mr. Turner, that's such a lovely idea, but I have other plans." I exchanged a quick glance with my husband, who gave me a reassuring smile. Despite Emily's behavior, he seemed unfazed, treating her with a warmth that seemed unwarranted. Later that night, as we prepared for bed, I couldn't help but voice my concerns. "Did you notice how she behaves, how she speaks to us?" My husband turned to me, his expression gentle. "Emily has always been, well, let's say unique. But she's family, and we have to find a way to get along." I sighed, frustrated. "I just don't understand why you're so lenient with her. She's rude and condescending." He pulled me into his arms, his touch soothing. "I know it's not easy, but I've known her all my life. She's been through her own struggles." I pulled away slightly, meeting his gaze. "That doesn't excuse her behavior, though." He sighed, his brow furrowing. "I'm not asking you to like her, Sarah. Just try to understand that she's a part of our lives, and I'll handle any family issues that arise." I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling within me. In that moment, I realized that my husband's relationship with his sister was far more complex than I had initially thought. And as I lay in his arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily's presence would continue to be a source of tension in our lives. One afternoon, as my husband and I sat in the living room, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Emily standing there once again, her expression as inscrutable as ever. "Sarah, dear, may I come in?" I stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "Of course, Emily." She walked in, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on me. "I've been thinking, Sarah, your house. It has so much history, so much character." I crossed my arms, my guard up. "Yes, it's a special place." She turned to me, her smile almost predatory. "And I've been thinking maybe we could make a trade." I raised an eyebrow, my confusion evident. "A trade?" She nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Yes, my little house for this one. I'm sure you'd appreciate the space, and I've always loved this neighborhood." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Emily, this house has been in my family for generations. I can't just give it away." She tilted her head, her smile never faltering. "Think about it, Sarah. My house is cozy, and this one, it's grand, it suits you." My husband stepped forward, his tone firm. She turned to him, her expression shifting to one of innocence. "Oh, I didn't realize I was causing a stir. I was merely offering." I clenched my fists, my frustration boiling over. "This is our home, Emily. It's not for sale." Her smile remained, but there was a coldness in her eyes. "Very well, Sarah. But remember, sometimes opportunities come knocking only once." As she left, her words hung in the air, a threat disguised as an offer. I turned to my husband, my heart heavy. "Did you hear that? She's not going to let this go easily." He pulled me into a comforting embrace. "We'll face this together, Sarah. No matter what happens, this is our home, and we'll protect it." As his arms wrapped around me, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Emily might have her plans, but so did we. And I was prepared to fight for the house that held not just my family's history, but our future together. Time moved forward, and life continued to weave its intricate threads. My father's health, once strong and unyielding, began to waver. The news hit me like a tidal wave, crashing through the walls of denial I had built around me. It was a reality I was unprepared to face. Days turned into nights spent at the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic becoming all too familiar. My father's once vibrant eyes now held a weariness that tugged at my heart. I held his hand, the warmth of his touch grounding me as the world seemed to spin out of control. One day, as the sun painted the hospital room in soft hues of orange and gold, my father spoke to me with a voice weakened by illness. "Sarah, my dear, I want to talk to you about something important." I squeezed his hand gently, my heart heavy with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Of course, Dad. "Anything you want to talk about." His eyes held a mixture of sadness and resolve. "You know how much this house means to our family. It's been passed down through generations, a place where memories have been etched into the very walls." Tears welled in my eyes, and I nodded. "Yes, Dad, I know." He smiled weakly, his fingers trembling slightly. "Sarah, my time is drawing near. I want you to promise me that you'll cherish this house, that you'll carry on the legacy." My voice cracked as I tried to hold back tears. "I promise, Dad. I'll honor your wish." He reached out, wiping a tear from my cheek with a tenderness that belied his frailty. "That's my girl. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Remember, this house is more than just bricks and mortar. It's a piece of our family's story." In the days that followed, my father's condition deteriorated. The room that had once been filled with his laughter and stories now held a heavy silence that was almost unbearable. I sat by his side, holding his hand, whispering words of love and gratitude for all he had given me. And then, one quiet night, he slipped away, leaving behind a void that seemed impossible to fill. As I stood by his bedside, the weight of his absence settled over me like a suffocating blanket. But amidst the sorrow, there was also a sense of gratitude for the time we had shared, for the lessons he had taught me, and for the precious gift he had left behind. In his will, my father left the house to me, an inheritance that held more value than any material possession ever could. It was a reminder of his love, his sacrifice, and his belief in me. And as I walked through the rooms that held echoes of his laughter, I knew that I had a responsibility to carry forward the legacy he had entrusted to me. Little did I know that this inheritance would soon become a source of contention, testing the bonds that held our family together. The storm that had been brewing was about to break, and I would have to find the strength to navigate its tumultuous waters. In the wake of my father's passing, grief clung to every corner of our lives. The house that had once been filled with his warmth now echoed with memories that both comforted and haunted me. It was during this fragile time that Emily chose to make her presence felt once again, casting a shadow over the fragile equilibrium we had managed to establish. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the room in a warm, melancholic glow, Emily's voice cut through the silence. "Sarah, may I have a word with you?" I turned to face her, my heart heavy with the weight of my father's absence. "What is it, Emily?" She took a deep breath, her eyes fixing on mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "I've been thinking about the house, Sarah. It holds such sentimental value for both of us." I eyed her warily, my guard up. "Yes, it does." Emily's lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've been speaking with your husband, and we both believe that it might be better if the house came into my possession." My heart skipped a beat, my mind struggling to process her words. "What are you saying?" Her gaze never wavered. "I think it's time for you to consider the greater good, Sarah. This house has been in your family for generations, but times change. It's only fair that we find a way to share its benefits." Anger bubbled up within me, fueled by a sense of injustice. Share its benefits. Emily, this house is my inheritance, a gift from my father. It's not up for negotiation. Her expression remained unreadable, a mask of calm confidence. "Sarah, I'm your family too. I want what's best for all of us." I felt my husband's presence beside me, his voice gentle but firm. "Emily, this house is a part of Sarah's family history. It's not something we can just give away." She turned to him, her tone sweet but laced with steel. "Oh, darling brother, don't be so naive. This is about more than sentiment. It's about practicality, about ensuring a secure future for all of us." I could no longer contain my frustration. "Emily, this house is not a bargaining chip. It's not something I'm willing to part with." Her smile faded, replaced by a glint of irritation. "Sarah, I suggest you think long and hard about this. It would be a shame to let sentiment cloud your judgment." My husband's voice was soothing, a balm to my anger. "Emily, this is a decision we'll make as a family. Sarah's feelings and wishes matter just as much as anyone else's." She stood there for a moment, her gaze locked with mine, before finally nodding. "Very well, if that's how you feel. But remember, Sarah, decisions have consequences." As Emily left the room, a chill settled over the atmosphere, leaving us in a state of tension that I knew wouldn't dissipate easily. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was faced with a choice that could irreversibly alter the course of our lives. As the weight of Emily's ultimatum settled over me, I realized that the road ahead was about to become even more treacherous than I had ever imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the tension within our home grew palpable. Emily's ultimatum continued to hang over us like a storm cloud, casting a shadow on what was left of our once happy life. My husband's loyalty to his sister had placed me in a position I never thought I'd find myself in, torn between the man I loved and the principles I held dear. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, I found myself facing my husband across our living room. The weight of Emily's demands pressed heavily upon us. "John, we need to talk about this." He sighed, his expression weary. "Sarah, I know this is difficult, but Emily is my sister. She's been through a lot." I nodded, my frustration simmering beneath the surface. "I understand that, but this house is a part of my family's history. I can't just give it away." He rubbed his temples, his voice strained. "Sarah, she's offering her house in exchange. It's a fair deal, and it would make her happy." I looked at him incredulously. "A fair deal? John, you're asking me to let go of something that means the world to me." His tone grew more intense, his frustration matching mine. "And you're asking me to choose between you and my sister." My heart ached at the ultimatum he had just given me. "Are you threatening me with divorce?" He hesitated, his eyes filled with a mix of desperation and anger. "I don't want it to come to that, but I can't stand by and watch you refuse a compromise that could save our family from tearing apart." I shook my head, disbelief and hurt coursing through me. "You love her more than me, don't you?" He reached out to touch my hand, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, it's not about love. It's about finding a solution that doesn't leave anyone shattered." As he spoke, I felt a knot of resolve forming within me. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I couldn't live in a marriage where I felt second, best. I couldn't let someone manipulate me into giving up something that held so much sentimental value. The next morning, as he left for work, I watched him go, a mixture of sadness and determination in my heart. I had made my decision. I knew what I had to do. With a heavy sigh, I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the divorce lawyer. As I spoke with her, my hands trembled, but there was a fire in my eyes that hadn't been there before. I filled out the necessary papers, my heart aching with the weight of my choice. By the time my husband returned home that evening, I had packed his belongings into a suitcase, placing it by the door. As he walked in, his eyes widened in surprise. "Sarah, what's all this?" I stood my ground, my voice steady despite the emotions churning within me. "I've made my decision, John. I won't let anyone manipulate me or threaten me. I won't let our marriage be a battleground for your sister's desires." He stared at me, a mix of shock and anger crossing his features. I nodded, my voice resolute. "I am. I won't tolerate being treated this way." His anger flared, his voice rising. "You're willing to throw our marriage away for a house?" I met his gaze, my heart heavy but my conviction unwavering. "It's not just about the house, John. It's about respect, love, and the fact that I deserve better." He stormed out of the house, his rage echoing in the silence that followed. As the door slammed shut, I felt a mix of sadness and relief wash over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had taken a brave stand, and no matter the outcome, I knew that I had reclaimed a sense of agency and self-worth that was worth more than any house or compromise. Weeks later, as I stood before a judge in a small courtroom, I recounted the events that had led me to this point. "Your Honor, my husband had given me an ultimatum, threatening divorce if I didn't agree to trade the house with his sister. He manipulated me into making a choice that went against my principles." The judge listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "And how do you wish to proceed?" I took a deep breath, my voice unwavering. "I want a divorce. I want to be free from a marriage where I'm forced to compromise my values and self-respect." The courtroom was silent for a moment before the judge nodded. "Very well. Based on the circumstances and the evidence presented, I grant the divorce. Mr. and Mrs. Turner, your marriage is hereby dissolved." As the final words were spoken, a mixture of emotions flooded over me. Sadness for the end of a chapter, relief for the chance at a new beginning, and a sense of empowerment that I had stood up for myself and found the strength to take a brave stand. As I walked out of the courtroom, I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it head on, guided by the knowledge that I had reclaimed my voice and my autonomy.